McGraw-Hill Professional presents The New Extraordinary Leader, Turning Good Managers into Great Leaders, 3rd edition, written by John H. Zenger and Joseph R. Folkman, narrated by Scott R. Pollak. Introduction. What's different in this 3rd edition of this book? First, we sought to bring up to date all of the data and our conclusions from the data. More than 15 years have elapsed since the first edition. The world changes in that time period. Second, we discovered new insights about leadership that expand our understanding. Rather than the 20 insights that were in the original, we now present 35. Finally, the original book was primarily focused on individuals as leaders and how they could best develop themselves. In this edition, we added 6 chapters that describe how organizations can most effectively contribute to the development of their leaders. Yet much has remained the same. We originally had 3 objectives for this book. First was simplicity. We insisted that the book provide a clear, understandable message. Nothing is more irritating than to read a book on a topic of great personal interest and then close the book and not be able to summarize the book's point of view or basic thesis. Our second objective was that the contents be actionable. We do not expect that every idea in the book will be something you can implement immediately, but success for us will be your ability to take much of our findings and be able to do something with them next Monday morning. Our third objective was that the book be empirical. We insisted that it be based on hard data, facts, and statistical analyses. Huge sets of data were the touchstone to which we constantly returned. While the original book was based on analyzing 200,000 multi-rate feedback instruments, 360-degree feedback, pertaining to roughly 20,000 leaders, this edition contains data from more than 1 million instruments that analyze 120,000 leaders worldwide. Frankly, we tire of books by executives and business writers that primarily express personal philosophies and beliefs, especially when they are so inconsistent. The discipline of leadership and those committed to developing leaders inside organizations surely deserve better. Our standard was to have every conclusion grounded in objective data. The combination of hard data and statistical analyses were to be the point of the spear. It then became our task to make sense of the data and to put logical explanations around our findings. We welcome feedback from readers. The topic deserves a great deal of dialogue from all of us who are concerned with the future of our vital institutions, universities, schools, hospitals, government agencies, and businesses. These all need leaders to flourish. Our hope is that the information that follows will in some small way aid in the development of those much-needed leaders. Part 1. How individuals develop their leadership capability. The first 9 chapters of this book update research that was conducted 17 years ago, examining the nature of leadership, leadership competencies, the value of strengths, when to focus on leadership failings or weaknesses, and our discovery of an alternative pathway that leaders may use to build their strengths. The original research involved our analysis of 200,000 multi-rater feedback instruments that pertained to 20,000 leaders. They were mostly from North America, with a smattering of data from Europe, the Pacific Rim, and South America. Now, 17 years later, we've done a significant update, analyzing more than 1 million feedback instruments assessing the behavior of 90,000 leaders worldwide. And our data encompass the global business community, with substantial representation from Europe, the Pacific Rim, South America, the Middle East, and Africa. During the course of 17 years, we generated new insights about leadership, which are now included in these first chapters. The overall theme of Part 1 is an analysis of leadership and how individuals can better develop their effectiveness as leaders. Chapter 1. Demystifying Leadership. Leadership is one of the most observed and least understood phenomena on earth. J. M. Burns. The aura with which we tend to surround the words leader and leadership makes it hard to think clearly. Good sense calls for demystification. John Gardner. The mystery remains. While we were seated at a dinner table recently, it became known that we were writing a book. A dinner guest immediately inquired, "What is the book about?" "It is about leadership," one of us replied. Without hesitation, the guest inquired, "Do you really think people can be developed into leaders? Aren't they born that way?" We'd like to have $1 for every time that question has been asked of us over the past decades. The question seems as hardy as cockroaches or crocodiles. People in general have that query at the tops of their minds, and so do a lot of CEOs and public organization leaders. And the question is really in two parts. If the question is answered using the popular party line that says, "Of course you can develop leadership in people," the immediate follow-up question is, "How do you do that?" It is to those two basic questions that we address in this book. In this new edition, 6 chapters have been added that address how organizations go about filling their leadership pipeline, in addition to what individuals can do to elevate their own leadership effectiveness. Does the world need anything more written on the subject of leadership? On the one hand, it could be argued that the answer is a loud no. Consider the fact that more than 3.5 billion articles have been published about leadership in the past century. Whereas some are based on research, most reflect the personal opinions of the authors regarding leadership, derived from their own experiences or their observations of leaders. Many are written by successful business executives and reflect their own beliefs about what made them successful. Included in the larger body of articles are approximately 419 million research studies that have been conducted on leadership and published in scholarly journals. Then add 499 million books that have been written about leadership over the past 100 years. In recent years, that is more than 4 each day. Many of these were written by practicing leaders. Others were written by academicians and consultants who sought to explain this important role that some people perform. Given that immense body of literature, it would seem futile to add yet one more book. The reasons for one more book. Despite that extensive literature, leadership remains shrouded in mystery. Rather than making the subject clearer, one recognized leadership expert, Warren Bennis, summed it up by saying, "We have more information now than we can use, and less knowledge and understanding than we need. Indeed, we seem to collect information because we have the ability to do so, but we are so busy collecting it that we haven't devised a means of using it. The true measure of any society is not what it knows, but what it does with what it knows." He summed up his concern by remarking, "The more that is written about leadership, the less we seem to know." Regarding the enormous number of research studies that have been conducted, another respected scholar observed, "The results of many of these studies are contradictory or lack any clear conclusion." How mysteries are solved? There is an astonishing description of one approach to solving a mystery in Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's classic Sherlock Holmes tale. The Sign of 4. Dr. Watson remarks to Sherlock Holmes, "I have a gold watch in my possession. Would you have the kindness to let me have an opinion upon the character or habits of the late owner?" Watson was testing Holmes and attempting to tone down his arrogant manner. Holmes then complained that because the watch had recently been cleaned, he was robbed of the most useful data. But after carefully examining the watch, Holmes then proceeded to tell Watson a series of hypotheses about the owner. These included: the watch belonged to his older brother, who inherited it from his father. He was a man of untidy habits. He had gone through a period of poverty with intervals of prosperity. He had taken to heavy drinking before he died. Watson sprang from his chair and accused Holmes of having made inquiries into the history of his unhappy brother and then pretending to deduce it from his observations of the gold pocket watch. He concluded by saying, "It is unkind and, to speak plainly, has a touch of charlatanism in it." Holmes proceeded to explain how he had come to each of his conclusions by simply observing important data and seeing their implications. The initials on the watch's back, HW, suggested a family member, and gold watches usually were passed from father to the elder son. The watch was 50 years old. The initials appeared to be as old as the watch, and so it was most likely the father's watch, passed to Dr. Watson's brother. The owner's untidy habits were revealed by the dents and scratches that came from carrying this expensive watch in the same pocket with other hard objects, such as coins or keys. Inside the case of the watch were scratched in pinpoint the numbers of a pawnbroker's ticket, suggesting that the owner had gone through a period of dire poverty. The fact that he regained possession of the watch would imply that he also had periods of prosperity. The owner's drinking problem was revealed by thousands of scratches around the keyhole where the winding key had slipped and scratched the case. Holmes noted, "That is characteristic of a drunkard's watch, not a sober man's." Solving the mystery of leadership. Our hope is to take an enormous amount of data collected about and from leaders, and, through careful analysis and observation, begin to unravel the mystery of leadership. We will do our best to emulate Sherlock Holmes. It would seem that if careful attention is given to the clues that lie inside huge databases, the continuing mystery of leadership might be penetrated. Our objective is to provide readers with an empirical analysis of leadership, a simple and practical conceptual model of what leadership is, and a practical guide to helping leaders develop greatness. Our approach and understanding comes from our analysis of hundreds of thousands of leadership assessments from the direct reports of leaders, their peers, their bosses, and themselves. We let our findings guide our development of a practical theory. Because together the authors have roughly 3/4 of a century of experience in leadership development, we were surprised that the research changed some long-held beliefs about the nature of leadership and how best to develop it. The complexity of defining and describing leadership, or why the mystery exists. Everyone recognizes the challenge of trying to solve any problem that contains multiple unknowns. That is precisely the problem in trying to solve the leadership dilemma. There are a significant number of unknowns, and many of them are constantly changing. 15 of those variables are described below. 1. Leadership occurs in extremely diverse environments. Some leadership produces prescribed results in a relatively defined and established organization. Such leadership may speed a product to market or escalate the revenue from a sales force, but it is not conceiving new directions or strategies for the organization. Other leadership is exhibited in a startup organization in which there is no structure or form, and the leader must create it from scratch. 2. Different skills are required at different stages in a person's career. The research on career stages shows that people's careers go through very predictable stages. Early on, people start as apprentices, learning some new discipline. They then move to become more independent in their work. From there, some people move into managerial positions in which they oversee the work of others, or move from a narrow focus on their own work to a broader focus that involves coaching others to develop skill and expertise. Finally, a handful of people become pathfinders and visionaries who lead broad-scale organizational change and are the statesmen of their organization. Career stages are easily confused with organizational levels, but they are not identical. People who are promoted into managerial positions often continue to function as professional, individual contributors. They revert to the work they find most comfortable and never take on the role of coach, mentor, or director of others. They continue doing technical work at which they are highly proficient. However, the stage of a person's career is another variable of the leadership equation. 3. Leadership is driven by major events. Former New York Mayor Rudolph Giuliani was catapulted into the national limelight because of his handling of the terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center. Prior to that, his career had been waning. His career next took a completely new turn when Donald Trump appointed him as his attorney spokesperson, a role in which he garnered extremely mixed reviews. Winston Churchill had sought several leadership positions, but it was not until the events of Dunkirk that his talents were recognized. Through World War II, he was a premier leader, and then, when the war was over, his countrymen voted him out of office. When a friend suggested that this was a blessing in disguise, Churchill growled back, "If it is, the disguise is perfect." 4. The activities of leadership are not all the same. For example, not all leaders are required to lead change. Some leaders spend a great deal of time on people development activities, whereas others are riveted to the operational or production elements of their roles. 5. We confuse success and effectiveness as the general benchmark of leadership. If success is measured by dollars and titles, that clearly is not the same thing as effectiveness or truly producing the results that the organization needs. We believe this is probably best measured by the feedback from subordinates who experience that leadership. Much of the research on leadership makes no distinction between success and effectiveness. 6. We lack agreed-upon measures, so it has been frustratingly difficult to get agreement on who is a good leader and who is not. We lack robust measures of leadership effectiveness, and especially have no comprehensive measures that track the leader's impact on customers, employees, organizations, and shareholders. 7. We have not taken into account the evolving nature of leadership. That is, we have analyzed leadership around the characteristics that are required for success or effectiveness today, but have not given much attention to the competencies that will be required in the future. Thus, much of the leadership analysis and development has been looking in the rearview mirror and not looking out over the horizon. 8. There has been no way to define the different constituencies of the leader. Thus, if a leader is in charge of baby boomers born from 1945 to 1955, this would call for some different values, motives, and skills than if the leader was responsible for a group of Gen Xers born from 1975 to 1985. That complexity is now compounded with Generation Y, those born from 1986 to 2000, and the soon-to-come Generation Z born in 2001 and beyond. 9. Still another variable is whether the leader is operating alone versus acting as part of a leadership team. Clearly, there are organizations in which one person plays an extremely dominant part, exercising control and influence over the big issues along with the day-to-day tactics. Other organizations have a leadership team that acts in concert. In some cases, a formal office of the president has people who act quite interchangeably in the organization. 10. A further dimension is the impact of technology. Effectiveness in some organizations would demand a high level of comfort with the latest computer and information technology, whereas others would tolerate a leader who could neither send nor receive email. New technologies exist to conduct virtual meetings, and in some organizations a comfort and familiarity with such technology would be a must. A Dell Computer employee reported, "My boss spent the entire weekend retyping a 25-page proposal that only needed corrections. She claims the file I gave her was corrupted and she could not edit it. The PDF file I gave her was read-only, but all she had to do was copy it into a word processing program and make the corrections." 11. A new dimension of leadership is one of geography. Some leaders interact with a virtual team, whereas others have on-site staffs. This can be even further complicated by the fact that groups are often scattered across widely different time zones, thus making the leadership task even more complex. For example, holding meetings at one point in time can be cumbersome. 12. Another variable is the wide variety of leadership styles used within different organizations to motivate and inspire the front line. Some of the best research in this regard comes from John Katzenbach and is described in his book, Peak Performance. In that book, he describes firms that were extremely effective and successful, but that used very different approaches to getting high performance from the people within. He described 5 of these. Mission, values, and pride. In this approach, the organization immerses everyone in the traditions, the spirit, the core values, and the mission of the organization. This in turn generates great pride, and people produce at high levels because of that pride in the organization. The U.S. Marine Corps is a good example of this. Recognition and celebration. Many organizations he studied practiced extensive recognition for their people and went to great lengths to celebrate successes. Southwest Airlines is a classic example of this approach. Process metrics. Many organizations post detailed charts showing productivity and quality metrics for every department. People are trained to understand these metrics, and the organization's success is measured and rewarded by performance against these metrics. Individual achievement. Other organizations excel by allowing individuals to accomplish extraordinary things. Organizational effectiveness is the addition of all these excelling individuals. Professional service firms function this way, and McKinsey & Company is a good example. Entrepreneurial spirit. Still another approach to motivating people to high performance is to let them enjoy a huge financial stake in the potential success of the firm. Many high-tech startups have relied on this appeal to someone's entrepreneurial spirit, and this has enabled such organizations to excel. This is a good example of the complexity of leadership. All 5 of the above approaches work well. One is not right and the other's wrong. What could end up being wrong is for a recognition and celebration leader to attempt to function that way in a process metrics organization. Chances are the organization would reject such a leader as the human body rejects any foreign substance implanted in it. 13. Who decides those who are good leaders? We have been unclear regarding who is in the best position to evaluate leadership effectiveness. Organizations have often relied on performance appraisals from the level above to evaluate the effectiveness of a leader. We have studies from several organizations showing absolutely no correlation between performance appraisals and their 360-degree feedback instruments. Yet the research for past decades has shown that subordinates were in the best position to appraise any leader's effectiveness. Research in the military proved that having the enlisted men select sergeants was more effective than having higher-ranking officers make those selections. 14. Several companions of leadership effectiveness have clouded the issue. For example, all of the following have been shown to have some correlation to leadership effectiveness. Intelligence as measured by IQ scores. Physical characteristics such as height. Emotional or personality characteristics such as assertiveness and outgoingness. Biochemical characteristics such as testosterone levels in men. Because some correlation exists between these elements and leadership effectiveness, there has been a logical temptation to assume there to be a cause and effect relationship. At the same time, there was high interest in such conclusions from those responsible for leadership selection. The above elements did not help further the work of those concerned with development. 15. Language has an impact. Is the lack of adequate language partly responsible for the mystery that surrounds leadership? The Inuit, or as some call them, Eskimos, have some 23 words to describe snow. They can describe its hardness, texture, moisture content, color, age, and crystalline structure with their richer vocabulary. We, on the other hand, have roughly 3 words at best as we talk about powder, slush, and corn snow. It is possible that if our vocabulary were more precise and robust, we could better succeed in describing what leadership is and how to more effectively develop it. Given our current condition, leadership is still nearly impossible to define or describe in detail or specificity. However, as Professor Carl Weick has suggested, any idea can be simple, general, or accurate, but never all 3. We will strive to be general and accurate, but not specific. That appears to be the best way to improve our understanding of this most important topic. Research-based book. Our hope is to present a way for people to think about leadership in a highly practical and yet simple way. We will not review the past literature on leadership. Others have done that. Nor will we dwell on the theoretical. Nor will we attempt to describe all the tasks or activities of leaders. Others have done that also. Instead, we want to present a way for you personally to think about your own leadership abilities and how you might go about increasing those if you choose. And for those who have subordinates, we provide suggestions about what they and their organizations can do to develop leadership in the people who report to them. For those with responsibility or interest in how organizations can best develop their leaders, Part 2 of this book is for you. We believe this is best done by examining a huge body of data collected about leaders from their peers, their subordinates, their bosses, and themselves. Rather than describe our personal beliefs and prejudices about leadership, we will turn to more objective data. We think it enables us to discover some profound insights into the real nature of leadership. Where mysteries still remain, we call that to your attention and share our beliefs. To answer intelligently the question, are leaders born or made? And the sequel, if they are made, then how do you do that? We begin by providing the reader with a model of leadership that becomes our operational definition of a leader. That model then provides a workable vehicle with which to describe a practical way to make good managers into great leaders. This book examines the leader as seen through the eyes of those being led, subordinates, and influenced, peers, of those who manage the leaders, the bosses, and of the leaders themselves. This process has become known as 360-degree feedback because of its comprehensive view of a leader's behavior, looked at from above, the side, and below. Indeed, we later describe our database of some 1,500,000 responses using 360-degree questionnaires. We focus on the questions, what do these three groups, subordinates, peers, and bosses, notice? What do they see in great leaders that sets them apart from the average ones? Of those three perspectives, we conclude that the best way to understand leadership is to examine the impact leaders have on the people they lead. It is the subordinates' view we value the most because we believe they collectively have the most complete and accurate data. Peers see slices of a leader's behavior, but there is good evidence to conclude that their perceptions are less accurate than those of the people who report to the leader. We strongly believe that this comprehensive pool of data is far more powerful and accurate than information that would come from interviews of leaders themselves. As Michael Pollak noted in his book Personal Knowledge, most highly skilled performers in any activity, whether it be music, sports, or violin making, cannot accurately tell you what makes them so effective. Their behavior is often highly intuitive. You must actually observe them to accurately determine the true cause of their success. This database of approximately 1,500,000 questionnaires completed by subordinates, peers, and bosses about leaders collectively describes more than 121,000 leaders. They come from widely diverse industries. These leaders are from North America, along with many from Europe, the Pacific Rim, Middle East, Africa, and South America. To make our database and analysis more robust, we examined more than 44 different leadership assessment instruments. Rather than depending on the same set of assessment items for all 121,000 leaders, we examined a variety of different assessments, each built on different assumptions. This provided us with a database rich in diversity and helped to give us a much clearer sense of what makes effective leadership and what doesn't. Altogether, we included in our analysis more than 2,000 unique assessment items. Research methodology. We began our analysis by identifying the top 10% of managers as seen through the eyes of their subordinates, peers, and bosses, and compared them with the bottom 10%. The top 10% with the highest aggregate scores became a high-performing group, and the 10% with the lowest aggregate scores were placed in the bottom group. Next, we asked the question, what were the competencies or attributes that separated these groups? We were surprised by the results that came from analyzing all of these data. It opened our thinking to some highly promising new ways to look at leadership and provided new directions in the ways we go about developing leaders. Moving complexity toward simplicity. If you and 10 colleagues were asked to describe a computer, there would be
Sample complete. Ready to continue?